What himself? Are the youngest lad. Johnny. Them can't stand with. Vendetta. The struggle only make you better. Them right we off like a letter, but we still a trendsetter. The pain of the fight, all the hate, all the lies. What himself? Are the youngest lad. Johnny. Them can't stand with. Vendetta. The struggle only make you better. Them right we off like a letter, but we still a trendsetter. The pain of the fight, all the hate, all the lies done me, and somebody who me love. Push me another time, never sing another rhyme. Cut me now, you good and I see no blood. Ready up again, pain and heartbreak. Shut me in it for me love. All of me life experiences, things when me got through for real, build me up as a top. Why say them bad why I'm vain? Me nah no time for chase, me shoot it out one time. Me say me love the girl, the man, them artists is sexy and clean. But me nah gonna name nothing when I cook in a canteen. Do me see me all the while, what make you no run in? Chat all one of them have them my internet name. Full clip out of the party, well madam me. Nothing personal, I just how we let us stay. Now me telling you the pain of the fight, all the hate, all the lies done me, and somebody who me love. Push me another time, never sing another rhyme. Cut me now, you good and I see no blood. Ready up again, pain and heartbreak. Shut me in it for me love. All of me life experiences, things when. What himself? Are the youngest lad. Johnny. Them can't stand with. Vendetta. The struggle only make you better. Them right we off like a letter, but we still a trendsetter. The pain of the fight, all the hate, all the lies done me, and somebody who me love. Push me another time, never sing another rhyme. Cut me now, you good and I see no blood. Ready up again, pain and heartbreak. Shut me in it for me love. All of me life experiences, things when me got through for real, build me up as a top. Why say them bad why I'm vain? Me nah no time for chase, me shoot it out one time. Me say me love the girl, the man, them artists is sexy and clean. But me nah gonna name nothing when I cook in a canteen. Do me see me all the while, what make you no run in? Chat all one of them have them my internet name. Full clip out of the party, well madam me. Nothing personal, I just how we let us stay. Now me telling you the pain of the fight, all the hate, all the lies done me, and somebody who me love. Push me another time, never sing another rhyme. Cut me now, you good and I see no blood. Ready up again, pain and heartbreak. Shut me in it for me love. All of me life experiences, things when me got through for real, build me up as a top. Tell them all the while I start weighing up prepare. If violate me, I go have to go beef up your security. I've a leap of y'all, but none of them in a swear for. Some of them can never call them back, now them hate me. That I'm not proud of. But I am the alpha, can't rise against me when I'm here the rock of Gibraltar. But sometimes me feel like the world against Hulk. But me as the world, me and the money with salsa. The pain, all the fight, all the hate, all the lies done me, and somebody who me love. Push me another time, never sing another rhyme. Cut me now, you good and I see no blood. Ready up again, pain and heartbreak. Shut me in it for me love. All of me life experiences, things when me got through for real, build me up as a top. What himself? What himself? Are the youngest lad. Johnny. Them can't stand with.
Good evening and welcome to another episode of Apolitically Incorrect Guyana. My name is Kian Jabour and I have for the first time this year, my co-host, Mr. Timothy Jonas.
Happy New Year to everyone who watches Kian show.
All 10 of y'all. The other side don't even listen, they just type angrily. Yeah. I can't believe the nonsense he's talking.
Happy New Year to the trolls as well. Wish you energy and power.
I wish you patience and peace. I watched I did Freddie Kissoon's show on Wednesday. Listen. I have never met a group of angry commentators like the people that watch his show. So after the show, I went back on. I'm like, okay, well, let me see what kind of viewership we had. Let me see what kind of, conversation was had on Facebook while we were gaffing. Well, let me tell you, they ain't had a lot of gaff going on there. Every angry thing somebody could possibly think of to say about me. Oh, geez. How many people think I should be in jail? How much people, are very caught up in my love life?
But they stay on the show to say it.
Oh, yes.
I mean, if I look at the show, if I tune in and I don't like it, I kind of suck my teeth and I go and do something else. I go watch TV.
Right. Or something productive.
These people stay. They're dedicated. They remain there for the entire program, commenting throughout.
I am impressed by those guys, I must say. But at the same time, what I can, so I always,
Someone is paying them.
so Tim, I'm telling you, somebody. I know. First of all, I know for a fact somebody is. But what's interesting about it is that you can tell by the way they comment. Well, first of all, who comments? It's the same fake profiles over and over, or the same one or two aunties and uncles in New York or in some village that just have committed their whole lives to making sure that they defend the PPP, no matter what, and or PNC for that matter, because we say equally bad things about both, and then there's the ones that are paid because they come on and they would comment like at the beginning, right at the beginning, it's like super bad comments just to fill up the whole thing. So anybody logging on just sees angry comments, and then they would disappear like 20 minutes in, and that'd be the end of that.
But it's kind of lazy too, because
you're working for your money.
If they paid me to do it, I would try to invent a new personality every time I came on, so you wouldn't see the same Ravi Singh every time.
Yeah, but
change it.
But whole,
so that it's not monotonous. It begins to get predictable.
Tim, I wish you were a police. I wish you were a teacher. I wish you were a nurse, because at the end of the day, most of the argument boils back to that these people are not paid enough. All right, I can tell you. I know. I've seen the contract. I've seen the commentators. I've seen the messages between them and the ministry and so on, and the PPP personnel. And sorry, $150,000, $130,000 a month is not enough. But at the time, they look at it and they say, "Holy, I'm getting free money for the thing." And with the amount of work they're doing, I guess there's $150,000 worth.
Well, with the budget, they will now be not paying any tax. I think that would put them
below the bracket. Yes. Actually, you guys must post your pay slips. We're curious.
Anyway, yes, I know you come to talk about something more serious than your trolls.
More serious? Is there anything? Anyways, moving on. So we are going to talk about something much more interesting, and we're going to start off with the budget, though. Okay. So the conversation before I do that is there was this. We have to talk about social media again a little bit more because of this scenario that took place. So this parliamentarian for APNU side, Geeta Rampersad, Chanman, yes, good. Okay, she's an APNU parliamentarian, and I had a wonderful time today listening to the comments from both sides after she made her budget presentation, because what she did is she essentially supported the budget. What she essentially said, just in exact detail, was she supported the positive, progressive side of the budget, which is interesting to me because any guy in his would, right? Any right-minded guy in his would. If you just blindly disagree with the budget, then something is wrong with you. That's not how it works. Again, the conversation we're going to have is how non-political the budget is, right? But we'll get to that in a second. But what was interesting is, just to start off, the first thing that happened is the APNU supporters got very, very racist. She's an Indo-Guyanese, and the Afro-Guyanese supporters got very directly Indian people are bad, etc., etc. And then, and this is the part that I enjoy the most, you watch the PPP supporters jump in and scream, "Oh my gosh, these Afro supporters, these APNU supporters are so racist." And I sit down there and it always blows my mind that they can't, looking into the mirror, I guess you can't see, I don't know, you can't see your flaws, is it something that's taught to them? Is it that they don't see, that the PPP supporters don't see that they're exactly the same? How does that occur?
It's difficult, isn't it? You see, both sides see that they need to entice some numbers from the other side over. And they ask themselves, how can we persuade some of those numbers to come over to us? How can we do that? Mm-hmm. But even by approaching it that way, they are not recognizing in themselves that they are being loyal on the basis of race and ethnicity to their party. And they're trying to find some fools, some people who don't have the good sense to be loyal to the race and party on the other side, to betray the race and party and you hear that all the time. You hear words like betrayal, Judas, that kind of thing, to come over to the party that does not represent their ethnicity.
Right.
Now, as a policy, that is a stupidity, and yet they do it every time. So you see, when the PPP's in government, they gone into South Rumville, they gone to Linden, they building roads, they're doing all these
Agricola, wherever else.
And awarding the smaller contracts, admittedly, but awarding contracts to the Afro contractors, $2 million to cut the grass here and $2 million to dig a drain there. And they are hoping by doing so to show that this is one Guyana and we're government for all, and to entice some of those folk to come over so as to solidify their base as a majority. It doesn't work. It never worked. It will never work. After a calamitous 28 years in power, in 1992, Afro-Guyanese still voted PNC. It can't be more extreme than that. And after a calamitous 20-something years, in 2015, the Indo-Guyanese were still voting PPP. They weren't doing it because they were proud of the policies or could point to economic strategies that were bringing the country up. They were doing it because of ethnic loyalty. And this is not a criticism, because it's common sense. It is common sense that if the other party doesn't look like you and marginalizes you when they're in power, you got to vote for your party. That's simple common sense. But what happens is that when you got someone like a minister, and it was Nagamutu in his time, and now it's somebody else, who doesn't look like you, so a representative of the party who's in the minority, and you got the ones or twos. The prime minister is always chosen from the other ethnicity to show we're one Guyana. You know, we're a circus.
Every time.
So when one of those folk steps out of line, the only possible reason, as far as anyone's concerned, could be race. It can't be because there's a sound policy or because they're independent-minded. It can't be any of those things. It's race, and that's part of the clown show. It's part of the circus.
No, absolutely. And I like to make this point. I think it's so important. As Tim just mentioned, if you look at the numbers, and this is not my opinion, okay? Now, I'm begging you all, just look at the statistics, okay? The first thing that you need to remember is Irfan Ali is not doing anything different than every single president has done during their tenure, all right? So, Barra Jagdeo himself walked all the villages of this country. Granger, out on the road. Don't worry about them cardboard cutouts that you're thinking about. You remember how everybody used to abuse that Granger using the helicopter to fly around to all the villages? Well, guess what? Irfan Ali doing it now. So it's the same thing that they have always done. The only difference now is Irfan Ali is posted on social media. So everybody who doesn't know politics or doesn't understand or have any history of, paying attention to it, they believe, wow, this is the first time this is happening. This president is doing so much more than everyone. And I sit in there saying, so we have to take all the other presidents, including Barra Jagdeo, just used to sit around and lime and hang out. So the joke about the entire dynamic is that after everything, and this is why we're here, because some of us that can look at the numbers, after all the work that we have watched all the presidents do throughout history, it shows, if nothing at all, that nobody that votes based on race is changing sides. All right? So during all of this hullabaloo, and I love to use my favorite recent example because the PPP struggled to they struggled to argue with it. At the end of the day, after all that they did in Linden from the local government election, they had national size campaign in Linden.
And made no headway.
And Linden completely won every single seat in Linden.
No.
PNC.
Now, that isn't even a criticism of the political party.
No.
Because in their turn, the PNC did it. You saw them in the interior trying to persuade Amerindians to support them. You saw them in other areas trying to persuade people that didn't look like them, that they were for the whole country, government for the people. In fact, I'm sure you'll remember there was a photograph that was photoshopped that had different race children surrounding the president, that kind of foolishness. So by honest means and dishonest means, you had this effort to try to look as if you were a multiracial party, when neither of them is a multiracial party.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't know how to fix it. You know, the irony is, I have interfaced with representatives from the two parties, and I tell you, they're racists in both parties. But for the most part, at the higher levels, I have not discerned personal racism among them.
No.
And yet, by some miracle, they find themselves, whether it's because of their family, whether they took it in with mother's milk, allied with the party that represents their ethnicity. And there's got to be some soul searching at some point to ask, well, why is this? Why is it that we are the Indo Party, and I am not racist, but I am an Indo-Guyanese representing the Indo Party and fighting in the Indo Party against those people that don't look like me, and I justify it not by saying my party has done great things, because the truth is neither party has done anything noteworthy, but I justify it by saying, but we're better than those people that don't look like us.
Right. Yeah.
And how sad is that?
No, it's absolutely. And that I think, just before we jump into conversation, because I wanted to run on that thought, is I make sure that everybody understands the statistics. And in 2011, we had a minority government. They ran for 4 years, and then they went to the elections year. And then just before the fifth year finished, they prorogued parliament. One long hullabaloo story. Good, no problem. In 2015, APNU won. Everybody hated PPP. We done with PPP. They corrupt, they favoritism, family and friends. We don't like them no more. And with all that hype and excitement, and I'm speaking particularly to the swing voters, because I want you to remember that big movement, vote like a boss, something else I can't remember. APNU and AFC are now together. Grange is the future. We done with PPP. And you remember that excitement. And everybody went out and voted APNU AFC. And APNU AFC won by one single seat. Okay? Just keep that in mind. APNU AFC, after everybody hated PPP, won by one single seat. Let's call it 6,000 votes. So 6,000 people decided whether it was going to be PPP or APNU. APNU won 2015. Now, PPP comes out and they do their weekly press conference and the newsrooms kick in and the pro-PPP propaganda kicks in, Guyana Times, and everybody says, oh my gosh, everything gone to the dogs. This country is crumbling. I'm feeling it in my pocket because I'm reading it on the news. And everybody said, you know what? We're done with the mismanagement of APNU. We don't like them anymore. We're done with APNU altogether. All right? And you know, all of us, 2020, I can even tell you, Tim and I started an entire new political party because of how bad we believe APNU did. But instead of joining PPP, we decided to go down the middle, okay? Because we agree with y'all, APNU did a terrible job, right?
Well, let's be straight on that too, because it wasn't because APNU did a terrible job. It was because AFC had failed to draw the line in the sand to say, this is where the moderates are. We represent the moderates. We are rejecting ethnic politics. And AFC was subsumed.
Absolutely.
It became faceless.
Yes. So when the rest of absolutely right. Let me retract. Not because of how bad APNU did, because we were not looking at APNU and PPP. We were looking at AFC. So our entire motive was because AFC did a terrible job at what they were supposed to do, right?
Exactly.
Simple as that. And that's completely the thinking, right? Now, remember in 2020 election, now that all said and done, counted and recounted the votes, PPP only won by one single seat, okay? And I want you to remember all the hype. I remember how angry you were at APNU AFC. I want you to remember everything about it. All these people in the middle, all these people that are willing to not vote on race. Now you have to understand, the power lies in the middle, all right? Because at the end of the day, during all of that, look at the numbers. All the power resided only in 6,000 people. Now here's what's interesting on the next statistic about 2020 election, is that I think about 7 third parties ran. If you were to take all 7 third parties and put them together, and all the people willing to vote outside of APNU PPP, then we would more than likely have a majority right now. Well, a minority government, a minority government
with
right
an opposition majority in parliament,
yes.
Which to me is the only solution that's available to Guyana now.
Absolutely. So that's what's going to head us straight into the conversation we're about to have about the budget. Now, I'm going to double back on what Tim said, which is very interesting. Tim said, the truth is, none of these two parties have done anything more transformative than the other. Now, I'm going to state this off the bat because it's, again, doing Freddie's show and then listening to all the little, ministers and so on doing their little social media stuff. Here's what's interesting. Every time you speak about the budget, they start to focus on how important infrastructure is. They just keep hammering infrastructure over and over and over. We need infrastructure, we need infrastructure, we need infrastructure. Now, every right-minded Guyanese knows, one, we do need infrastructure. They're absolutely right. We also know that they are way over capacity on infrastructure. We know that contracts being given away and not done. We know that half the contracts being done are shoddy work, are garbage. The roads they're putting in, 2 inches of asphalt and nothing underneath. I think somebody sent me a picture the other day of the contractor that didn't even, in South, it was in South, if I can't remember the road. I should have gone and taken pictures and I didn't. So the person knows, I apologize to you for not doing that. The contractor didn't even bother digging up the old road. They didn't even bother taking it up and leveling it and compacting it and doing the whole process properly. All they did was they got the contract for, call it 20, 30 million, how much ever it was, and they bring the asphalt in and they just throw it on top of whatever was there previously.
Again, though, I don't think that is a commentary on the budget. That's a commentary.
Good.
The implementation, how you spend it and your system.
Excellent. Well, that's a re-segue into. So, no, but I precursing why the conversation we're about to have about the budget versus the implementation of the budget needs to be understood. So we all right-minded Guyanese understand why this, why infrastructure is important, but at the same time, right now, we're having major issues with it. Yet it still continues to be the highest praised and the highest allocated aspect of the budget. Now, I'd like to just make a comment just before we get in on infrastructure. The PPP were in power for 20-something years, and we watch infrastructure crumble under them, okay? APNU went in, and I really always like to make sure we point this out. APNU are the ones that kick-started, first of all, and this is their big claim, the roundabout situation. And to this date, still the best roundabout built in this country. All right? The Kitty roundabout. All right? And they did that without oil money. Okay? They didn't start to receive oil money yet. And APNU worked on their infrastructure and they did their minor stuff. I could even go as far as saying that entire where the ugly bird there? What's the name of the roundabout? The South roundabout? The South roundabout all the way to the Diamond roundabout, right? So the ugly bird, the jaguar, and the anteater, that was planned out under APNU times, right? That conversation had been had under them. And I know they had all of the plans laid out. I remember the conversation happening in Parliament about it. All right, they didn't have the money to do it. I think they were looking for loans, etc., etc. All right, so only so much could have been done.
Well, I think that's the point that needs to be made. You see, first of all, a plan is cheap.
Yeah,
right? So it's kind of easy to plan.
Kind of like writing a budget is cheap.
In fact, Burnham's administration had great plans for the development of Georgetown. Burnham was the one who planned the Kanji Bridge and the Demerara Bridge and all of those things.
Right.
So if you want to talk about plans and give credit for plans, well, anybody could, without much cost, sit down and do plans.
Good.
The implementation of the plans is where this government has fallen down. Mm-hmm. But the reason that the previous governments weren't able to implement the plans is they didn't have money.
Yeah.
And I think this is where we got to go. This is for me what is central. I've seen politicians in Parliament on the government side say what a splendid budget this is, a great budget. This is the largest budget ever, record-breaking. Kudos to the PPP for such great governance. And I want to make this point. The reason that the money is available now has nothing to do with the economic policy of either the PPP or the PNC. It is a happy accident that we found oil and therefore we got plenty money. That can't be attributed to any economic policy or any good governance of either PNC or PPP. It is free money. And as you know, I call it free money all the time.
Yeah.
So let's step away from trying to politicize this thing to say, look how much money we are spending. To say, thank God we got free money. Let us see how most frugally And with fiscal responsibility, we can spend it properly to get bang for the dollar, to get value for our money. That is where it is. So the budget is not about, oh, it's a record budget, kudos to the government. We got free money. There's no kudos to anybody for that.
They didn't earn
the
it.
The question, no. And I'll go further. In the last 2 years, income from oil represented, 2 years ago it was 60-something%. Now it's 76% of our income as a country.
Yeah.
Right? So oil is becoming a greater proportion of our income, whereas rice, sugar, gold, everything else is either stagnant or declining.
Yeah.
With the exception of bauxite, which has gone up because a private company has done well in terms of that production.
Yeah.
But everything else, agriculture, stagnant. Look at the rice industry. Look at the problems the rice farmers are having. Look at the disaster that our government continues to perpetuate with Gaisuko and the sugar, which traditionally had been our backbone. And let us stop saying kudos, good governance, and let us realize we got free money. How best are we to spend it? And the way to spend it looks at two ways. First of all, infrastructure. Infrastructure is important. It's important because it needs to develop so that we can use it to benefit our other industries. You want roads to mining areas. You want roads to agriculture areas. You want a road to Brazil so that goods and produce can circulate more freely. You want ports of entry, Pomeroon River. You want the other side of the Demerara River developed. You want Berbice River developed as a port so that goods can move more freely and easily. You want access to the agricultural areas so that goods can come from farm to market more easily.
Yeah.
So you need infrastructure. You also need people resources, human resources. And the question is, how to balance the money you're spending on infrastructure, hopefully you're spending it sensibly, and the money you're spending on human resources so that we have enough engineers to oversee the projects when you are awarding contracts to make sure the contracts are performed properly. That's the balance. Yeah. So don't let's talk about good governance, kudos, because it's a record breaking. It's free money.
Right.
Let us see how the money has been spent.
Good. And so my comment on the budget is, this is a great budget. My comment on the last budget is that it's a great budget. My comment on the 2022 budget is that it's a great budget. My comment on every single budget, even in APNU times, is that it's a great budget.
And you know why? And this is where we get silly, and this is why I say we're a circus. Because no matter what the budget is, there will be some money allocated for infrastructure. There will be some money allocated for human resources to help salaries and health benefits and that kind of thing. And the government will always celebrate it to say, look how much we're spending on infrastructure. And the opposition will always criticize it to say, you're not helping poor people.
Right.
And when the shoe's on the other foot, exactly the same will happen.
Yep.
It cannot be about politics anymore. It really needs to be about a sensible discussion as to how the money is being spent, how it's being allocated, and what our priority should be.
Yeah. Simple, basic understanding that if all the budgets are great, and everybody can talk positively about it, everybody can make their little tweaks. The reality is, if you have not felt it throughout the years thus far, the problem is not the budget. It's, as Tim mentioned, it's the implementation of the budget. So the amount of money that's going to corruption. I think it was the Transparency or the IMF. I'm not sure who brought it out recently, but you know that Guyana, well, you know how far down, I think we're 90-something or 80-something on the transparent on the corruption index.
I haven't seen it recently,
countries.
I know we're an alarming place.
We're in an alarming place. And they're stating something like 49 cents on every dollar is stolen.
I didn't read that. That's it.
Yeah. I'm gonna bring those numbers up soon. I saw a couple posts about it, and I have it screenshot, but I can't send it now. Sorry. Nonetheless, what's interesting about it is that understanding that if we have all of this free money that the government has not earned, and now they are spending it in a way that is more focused on the future of infrastructure, but not dealing with the human needs currently, then I think this already speaks a volume of who is benefiting from this budget mostly, and where at the end of this large spending spree, we are going to end up.
Okay. Again, it's not black and white.
Right.
So there are a couple of things that I think we need to point out about this budget that are positives. Now, the first thing is that the tax threshold has gone up from 100,000 a month to 130,000 a month. Now, we've been talking about that, and we had made the point repeatedly that the budget and the government's policies need to be targeted at helping the people at the bottom who need it the most. I celebrate raising the tax threshold, but it hasn't been enough. That tax threshold should be between $175,000 and $200,000.
To start.
Before you start paying tax.
Yeah.
You should not be saying to somebody who's earning $650,000 US a month, $650 US a month, that he needs to be paying tax on anything over that. That threshold is too low. The second thing that was done is that for the next stage, the tax was reduced from 28% to 25%. Again, a good move, but not enough. If you want to help the people at the bottom, you got to raise the tax threshold so that the money that they are earning, that they see as a pay slip, goes in their pocket and goes home. They mustn't be paying it back. I would like to see that. Another good thing that I saw, and again, it wasn't enough, and we had talked about this on this program and in other forum, that because mothers in Guyana are usually the ones who care for the children. We are a matriarchal society. Daddy goes his way, and daddy usually, if in a broken home, it's usually the mother. The father's off, not looking after his responsibilities. The government said that they will be paying $10,000 a month for every child to one parent. I appreciate that, and I approve it. There are 2 points I'd like to make about it. First of all, the money should be paid to the mother unless there's good reason why it should be paid to the father. The reason I say that is that we have a sickness in Guyana, domestic violence, and one of the solutions to domestic violence is to ensure financial autonomy for the mother. So you got to find ways to put money in the mother's pocket. $10,000 is not enough. The other problem with $10,000 is it will be cash and it will be dealt with that way. I'd like to see a much larger sum, but a portion of that sum going into a bank account that is created when the child is born and that grows so that when the child is 16 or 18, the child then has a large lump sum to access to decide if to pay university fees or to start a business and is given a head start in life. I'd like to see a different tax regime for non-Guyanese. We got Guyanese coming into the country. They are competing in oil and gas. They are competing, the accountants, the engineers, the people working in the accounts department.
The medical staff, everything. Yeah.
And Guyanese are disadvantaged as a result. If the foreigners are coming in, they are welcome, but they should be paying a sum of money for their visa, and they should be paying a higher tax rate than we are, so that on the job market, we are more competitive. They must be paying their way.
Yeah.
I wasn't seeing any of that. And therefore, what we have increased competition in the job market at that level. If you go in Georgetown, check on the highways any morning, you see a large number of foreigners jumping into trucks, going in the construction area, going in the agriculture area. Guyanese need first jump on jobs. So there are some good things, but there needs to be more. And that goes to the human resources. Now, as you know, part of what I quarrel about with human resources is that without the human resources personnel to oversee the management of contracts, we have contracts awarded to contractors who are incompetent, family and friends, in a corrupt process, single sourcing and that kind of foolishness. But the performance of those contracts is not monitored because the government doesn't have any public service engineers to scrutinize and observe and monitor and sign off. We need to be employing engineers. We need to be training, focusing at UG for people to train in engineering, and we need for there to be a core of engineers in the public service that on rotation an engineer is appointed to supervise every single contract that is rewarded, or else we will continue to have a strip of asphalt on a piece of mud that the first struggler drives over. You got a wobbly road like Sheriff Street, like the roundabout you just talked about, like Dennis Street. Any guy who's driving around sees the condition of these roads. They do not last.
Yeah. I want to dive into another aspect that is actually, I had a laugh with it with some PPP supporters because they themselves didn't understand why it was done. The indicator that was given when the government decided to put in this budget VAT-free on generators.
Well, that didn't help the poor people.
but we had to laugh at them because they themselves went, well, any logical person would sit there now and think to themselves, so we got more blackouts coming. And that's the only thing. Like, why else would that have been such a big priority?
That was expressly said. It was justified because of the challenges being faced by GPL. In so many words.
So all right, here's another, all right, let me, I should have said it on Freddie's show. I didn't even think about it because one of the comments made on the Freddie show was, any Guyanese would be willing to sacrifice 2, 3, 4, or 5% of their salaries to drive on better roads and to drive on Demerara Harbour Bridge across, rather than the current bridge that's there. And I did not respond. Well, I know Guyanese would be willing to pay 10% of their salaries to stop getting blackouts.
Well,
all right.
That. And when you go over to Suriname, people are not buying generators. People are not buying water pumps. They're not buying water filters. They're not buying overhead tanks that are so ubiquitous in Guyana all over the place, as we are seeing. And if you add up the amount of money, the amount of foreign exchange that is wasted on the deficiencies of Guywa, because you got to be self-sufficient with water, the deficiencies of GPL, because you got to be self-sufficient with electricity. We are buying solar panels, we are buying batteries, we are buying backup units.
Anything.
And you think about the waste involved in that. And then you hear that there's a gas to shore project over the river that I understand Exim Bank has now said that there was
no feasibility. You caught that one. Yes, no feasibility.
And yet we are still being promised that the cost of electricity will be cut in half.
Yeah.
Now, without a feasibility study and with the project already being hugely over budget, I wonder who did that maths. Because I hear a lot of criticisms about, well, I'm a lawyer, I hear a lot of criticism lawyers don't know maths. But I don't understand the maths going on over the river, I'll tell you that.
It's not mathsing. Because I can tell you for a fact now, what this government has decided that they're going to do, they have decided that they have made a promise by any means necessary, that they have promised Guyanese 50% less electricity by the end of this term.
So it will be in the budget next year that there will be a subsidy for electricity because that's the only way it can be.
Well, we know for a fact that the gas cannot finish this year. It cannot be connected within the year. But not only that, and I'd like to say this to all Guyanese as well, again, right-minded Guyanese that aren't just blindly loyal and pretend to be ignorant but know the truth. But the reality is, if you look at your given electricity bill right now, it's almost doubled. So by the time this government gets into power, gas energy comes online and starts to give us power that this government has decided they are using our tax money to buy, we are going to be paying the same rates that we were paying last year.
One of the themes I really would love to see, and we're not going to see it unless we get the majority opposition in Parliament, is the decentralization away from government of the purse strings. You see, you're speaking about GPL. Long ago, GPL should have been decentralizing generation and should have been buying electricity from private generation companies.
Yeah.
There are companies that would like to come in to set up solar farms, to set up waste burning in the forest industry and to generate electricity and sell to the grid.
Yeah.
GPL is not playing that game. Because to play that game, you are removing from central government the power to award contracts to decide who buys generators, who maintains generators, all that kind of thing. And you are losing control.
Yeah.
Whereas it is so easy to create a clean, efficient system of electricity generation that is reliable and cheaper just by allowing private people to do it and guaranteeing them that you will buy from them.
Yeah.
Not going to happen. Not unless you have an opposition in Parliament that can mandate it must happen.
Yeah. That's absolutely something that I think any political party should be coming out now openly and saying. The solution to our blackout woes that are going to continue to plague us. Okay, actually, I don't know which one to say first. Why I'm saying it's going to continue to plague us, just to throw this one out there, is the government has already stated that the one gas to energy plant, the one power plant that they're building over there will not be enough. They've already now preempted that they're still going to not have enough power after this gas to energy project is built.
Well, here's the thing, and anybody that thinks about it must realize it. Guyana is as big as England. We're at 3,000 square miles.
So how are we getting around?
Square miles. So you cannot have a distribution system from one generation source.
Correct.
Right now, if you go to Kokwani, if you go to Lethem, if you go to New Amsterdam, if you go over the river, if you go to Pomeroon, they have their own generation systems.
Right.
So for you to suggest that one generation source is going to supply a country 80-something thousand square miles, it's not going to happen.
Yeah, that's untrue. That's impossible.
So even to that, it wasn't thought.
Yeah.
And that's why we are hearing talk about bringing back on the grid the Amalia Falls project.
Right.
But how do you then justify the argument that there will be a 50% drop in the cost of electricity from that one project?
Yeah.
And we are already seeing
Correct.
it's over budget and it's not going to be supplying Guyana.
Yep.
We will have subsidization. We will continue to have subsidization of Gaisuko. We will continue to have subsidization of electricity in Linden. We will continue to have the government using the free oil money. Let us not talk about good governance, kudos, because it's a record budget. Free oil money until there is an opposition majority in Parliament to ensure that that money is applied for the benefit of both sides.
Yeah. And everyone in the country. But just to jump back on my point to finish, that is something that any political party should be jumping on now, to state that one of the promises that they make if there's a minority government that they will support is that we need to privatize electricity in this country, power generation. Meaning, as Tim just explained, Lethem can have their own power generation company. New Amsterdam, most of Region 5 can individually be broken up. Region 2. And you quickly realize that GPL has failed. And all that needs to be implemented here, first of all, you can imagine the amount of money that can be saved from GPL coming offline, this state-owned entity, and all the government would need to implement after that is a department to monitor these organizations. Is a department to make sure that they're running efficiently, they're running safely, and then the financing side of it, it would be in the contract that they would sign with these private companies to ensure that they are not overcharging customers for electricity.
You could maintain control of the transmission system as well.
And you can control the transmission
system. I
system.
think we had done the maths in this program that if you need 100 kWh of power, you get 5 companies, each of which can supply 25 kWh, and you guarantee them that you will be buying 15 each from them.
Yeah.
So they're happy.
Yeah.
You have your set price. And if one of them breaks down, you still have the full supply of electricity.
Correct. We're getting a call here. Let me see. Oh, sorry. Hello. Good evening.
Kian.
Hi.
I'm Mr. Jonas.
How are you?
Yeah, good. They're making so much a stadium.
True.
Right? How many people gonna benefit from that stadium they're making?
That's right.
You know, again, it's the award of contracts, but I want to hasten to say this, that to me, part of education in Guyana has got to be a holistic service that's offered to our children. I would like to see our schools not just offering the 3 R's, reading, writing, and arithmetic, but I would like to see them offering extracurriculars. Jamaica, for example, is well known for producing world-class athletes. They have a school program that is amazing. Trinidad, you got a team in Trinidad called the Green Machine, a school team, football, an amazing football team. We don't have anything like that. We are mediocre in sports. We got a good sports minister, Charles Ramson. He's a man, he got ideas, he got thoughts. Unfortunately, he is reined in because I suspect he's not too trusted in his PPP group, but that's too bad. But I would like to see, as part of the education for our children, a more rounded education that includes sports, includes music, includes martial arts, that kind of thing. But you're right, it is just one more aspect of how contracts are awarded in a way that's not really organized, not really structured, and we don't know what the end result will be.
And the other one is, they're building so many hospitals. Why they have to build them at the same time? Why don't they complete one?
These excellent. So I'll just to start in your stadium comment. I was actually in Berbice yesterday, and I quickly realized when you took a look at the stadium that your argument has to be, I'm not even sure Berbice is going to be able to hold sporting events and fill this stadium. It's one of these projects that you look at and it will turn into a national stadium situation where you might get.
It turn into what they call it, the one that Granger puts up.
Oh, right, the Durban Park. Yeah, no, you're exactly right.
Thank you very much for your comment. We're going to disconnect you because other people are calling, but we're going to try to answer what you're saying.
I can answer the hospital one now too. Thanks.
And the hospital one, and the other thing is they're supposed to do quarantine highway, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not going to be finished until Palmyra is completely finished. So you're talking about the next 10 years or maybe 15 years. I'll probably die before that.
Well, let's hope not.
Let's hope not. But you're exactly right. Projects, again, overstretching, not having
them. Instead of building a stadium, Region 5 and Region 6 would be benefit if they had a small airport like Ogle. That would have been better off for Region 5 and Region 6.
They don't have that in that area at all. I appreciate the comments. We can talk about it now.
Yes,
Thanks,
okay. Thank
you. The hospital comment I actually completely agree with as well. And, you're coming out and you're just like the education. Look at all the progress. They are building schools and hospitals. They are not stating the human resource issue, which is the main issue that the hospitals and the schools are having.
Well, this is the balance again in the budget.
Mm-hmm.
There's lots of money on infrastructure. Infrastructure is nice because you get kickbacks and you give money to the people supporting you, you award your contracts.
Right.
Let's focus on personal resources. But at the end of the day, if you don't have qualified doctors and nurses to populate those hospitals,
mm-hmm.
if you don't have teachers who are secure in their job, satisfied in job satisfaction, getting enough money that they don't want to migrate, populating those schools, giving our children a good education, then all the schools in the world
aren't going to change anything.
And what we are seeing is very, very high expenditure on infrastructure, schools and hospitals all over the place. But we're not seeing the system that will reflect ensuring that you are getting quality education care and quality health care to be delivered in those buildings. And I saw the other day someone commenting on our CXC results and on the quality of our teachers. Now, there's no doubt that our teachers are underqualified for the most part, and a lot of them are trying to migrate. But there's also no doubt that our teachers are trying their best. The majority of our teachers are trying their best. What I would like to see after you take
All right. Hello, good evening.
Good evening. We are there live?
Yes, we are on a live.
Yes, Jabour. Let's tell you something.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this, that you're saying this. We can't speak negative. We know this country now get the life to develop itself, the roads, the hospital, the airport. I think we got to do it quick. We have to do it quick because you got to know by if the aisle go up and down. But we have to be positive.
I appreciate the sentiments. There's nothing wrong with your comment. The argument right now again is that there has to be a balance for people development as well, because if we don't make sure everybody's educated and are healthy and are secure in the country, the truth of the matter is roads at the end of the day are not going to help us in our future if the people are still struggling. And that's what the conversation has to be.
I don't think that the approach should be to say got to be positive.
Yeah.
Got to be positive means let's spend it, let's give it away.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure that everybody will agree that yes, you must have an optimistic outlook, but that optimistic outlook must be based on your confidence that the money is being properly spent on a project, on a holistic project for Guyana that saves our people, that helps our people. And if you're not satisfied about that, and I'm sure you've heard there's corruption, are you optimistic about corruption? Quality of the work on the contracts, are you optimistic about that? Delays in the contracts, are you optimistic about that? If you want to ignore all of those things and say, let's be optimistic, then I don't think we are going to solve the problems we have. And we can't pretend that there are no problems. There are problems.
Yeah.
As I said, there are two aspects to a budget. You look at the money being spent on infrastructure and infrastructure projects, and you also look at the human resources development and how our people are being helped. And everybody will say that there needs to be more of one and less of the other. That's fine. But a healthy discussion must be informed and approach both to see how our people can be helped.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, the next conversation has to come up is we speak about building generational wealth. You hear this government continuously talking about our children benefiting in the future. But at the end of the day, when you look at the systems that are being set up and all the money, majority of the money being poured into infrastructure and focusing on that, I mean, what about building, when you talk about building generational wealth, what about small businesses access to capital? What about, medium scale businesses being able to expand? People earning enough money. And this is a good conversation, actually, because I've recently been dealing with the process of in housing, of going through getting a house and making sure, you're looking at the options of building your own house when you pay for a lot versus building using one of the government's buildings. Now, let me just start off with, I think, probably the most interesting part of this. The first thing off the bat is you have to come up with $3 to $5 million to just get to start the process. All right. Once that process has been started, now the next aspect is you get that goes to the government. You then get your letter approving your sales agreement, so you can go to the bank and get a loan, so you can pay the contractor, which is provided by the government, and then you basically take your loan out. The bank uses the land as the collateral, and you pay the contractor to build your house. Okay? Now, here's what's very interesting about that. Right off the bat, the first problem that I think you have is you have to come up with a couple $1 million to start. And then your house is going to take, as everybody can tell you, 2-3 years to build, right? Let's say 2 years minimum.
2 years to build a house?
Let me assume we're using one of the efficient contractors, one of those that have experience, not like the majority that don't, and they just giving out contracts. By the way, I apologize to all those people that are living in those houses now and struggling because walls cracking, foundations dropping, because the contractor that they had never built a house a day in their life. Now, what's the sustainability part, the generational wealth part that I find even more interesting is the hole that it's leaving for people, because you need to pay that millions of dollars up front, then you need to pay that loan, plus you need to pay your living expenses, all while that house is being built.
Well, Kian, first of all, a house is a lifetime achievement, so I don't think it's going to be for free. It must have some kind of seed money. Most people in the first world don't own their own houses throughout their life. And again, I do feel that one of this government's best achievements has been their housing schemes since Chedi Jagan was in president. So it has been a good project. The problem I have with it is, again, the centralization of the purse strings. You see, it's well and good to say we've got a lot of land, we're dividing up the land and we're giving away house lots. That has been done. What we're seeing, though, is that is no longer enough, because there is this need to ensure that you have enough contracts to award to ensure that your support is good. So that people who are borrowing money to buy a house lot are also being told, you get a discount if you use our contractor to build the house. Now, that brings in quality considerations, which, as you say, there are defects, there are problems in the houses. But it also means that the government continues to control the purse strings. What I'd like to see and what I'd like to suggest is that if a discount is being offered to new homeowners, to new land applicants, that discount should be applied as a percentage that is available as a system, and they choose their own contractors. Allow them that autonomy so that they can make the choices. You decentralize. It's the same money going into the system, but as long as the government is trying to control every aspect of how money is being spent, there will be problems. And I think that's where we're seeing problems in the quality of work that is coming out now. Absolutely,
you're absolutely right. That's on. I'd like to actually talk about the housing thing. We speak about it, owning homes. I know in Guyana particularly, it's a massive deal. I mean, owning your own home means you got an asset, right? Now, that word asset, I think, is something that I think at least our newer generation is learning and viewing very differently now. We've been watching the world, as the developed world particularly, and what has been happening with housing around the world. And you quickly understand that owning a house doesn't always mean you're going to be secure for the rest of your life now. And I'm watching something very interesting happen. I know it's an older generation situation where owning your house means it must go up and it will continue to go up. Now, every Guyanese can sit here right now and agree that land and housing in Guyana is overpriced. Okay? You yourself, I'm sure, can agree with that.
Yes, for sure.
Now, if everyone continues to receive land the way they are, then there's eventually going to reach a saturation point. Okay? Everyone will then have a house, or at least access to one, at a very heavily subsidized price. Because I believe the numbers are, you can go with the government and build your house for 30 million, or you could just take the land and you can build your own house and end up running you like 40 million, $50 million. So you're getting it heavily subsidized. Now, if that trend continues the way it continues, oil price drops, which it has to inevitably, and that bubble bursts, are all these house lots that people are receiving, whether half finished and the government they got money to spend to finish them, that's worst case scenario. Or we reach a situation where the price has to drop for housing. What then happens to all these people that have spent all the money that and are heavily in debt, all of their money, and are now heavily in debt for tens of millions of dollars, that have this house that doesn't have the value that it had when they built it or when they received it?
Right. So you identify a problem and you turn to the government to see if it is being anticipated and what's to be done.
Right.
The first answer, which sounds very Donald Trump, I'm sorry, but it is a point of view I have, that when you make an investment, we're all adults, and you
got to weigh the risk.
You make the investment and you take the risk. You gotta
Let's take his last one, and then you can finish your thought. Hi, Carla. Good evening.
Good evening. Is it Mr. Jabour?
Speaking, and Mr. Jonas is here as well.
I'm Mr. Jonas. Good. My thought and my question. I ask Mr. Jonas as a better person, right? You two are not discriminating. I love you. I follow you and everything, but I want a change for this country. The only way we will have a change is we have to be neutral. We have to have a change to ourselves in terms of you have to have a change for yourself. You can't do things as how you want. You want this, you want that. And guess what? You're not doing nothing better for yourself. Yourself has this mentality. Guyanese have to have a mentality. They have to have a mental thing to go through it. Meaning, they have to elevate themselves mentally.
Right.
Right?
Absolutely.
Mr. Jonas, to be honest with you, Mr. Jabour, to be honest with you, the only way I see things, you see, Mr. Jonas is the perfect for me. That's my opinion. The best person to run this country is Mr. Jonas. But a lot of people are against him.
Well,
my president, the person what I want to run this country is Mr. Jonas. Mr. Jabour, let me tell you something. You too speedy. You too speedy. Mr. Jonas is a humble person.
Definitely.
There's a lot of. I just watch your program a lot. I follow everything. You have your job, you have your wash pay and stuff. You're a typical Guyanese person just like me. You feel this, you know this. And you have a lot of speed just like me. But Mr. Jonas, I believe I will I don't vote. The first time I ever voted in this country was my chairmother. I changed that twice. I will never vote back for no frigging body in this country because none of them are better. Mr. Jonas is a cool person, like a Mr. Jack Dio. Jonas and Jack Dio, J for G, and I'm a Joda. I'm a J too. Right? Okay. Mr. Jonas is a cool guy. Humble. We need people like that, neutral people. He was a pastor. He was a pure person. I don't know why he cannot be for y'all party. I'll put my thumb in for Mr. Jonas. Not for you.
Thank you.
Nobody else.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate the call, man.
Let me say it to you, right?
Yeah.
First of all, that's very flattering. Thank you. But we are all human and we all got feet of clay. All of us, we are all ordinary people. Someone I used to consider a mentor said that in Guyana there's no blue blood, there's only red blood. All of us just got red blood. We're just ordinary people. But what you said first, I liked very much. That if we recognize that we are all Guyanese and that this is not about race, and you look at the two parties and you realize that the parties are about race, you can't vote for neither of the two parties. And I like very much that you said that, because that's my point of view. Come hell or high water, can't vote for either of them.
Yeah.
And if there's a fight between the two of them, you got to find a third option.
Yeah.
So I want to ask you to understand that we are all ordinary people, and somebody will always do something to let you down. So don't hold me up higher than anybody else. But the truth is that I came to the same conclusion you came to, that I'm not voting for those two parties because they have messed us up for too long. And I'm putting my vote elsewhere. And I will find a third party to do it.
And,
so thank you for your comment.
And I'd also like to make the comment, because I know you're still listening, that I completely agree with you. I do believe Mr. Jonas is the right choice. There's no question. I am speedy just like you.
Putting me under pressure, but
I am speedy just like you, and I guess that's how most of us Guyanese have to end up when we're in the positions we're in. But nonetheless, I do support Mr. Jonas. There is no question about that. As you can tell from him, I know it's my show, but it's now both. I have to change the name soon, and I will continue to do it, because I do believe his ideas are definitely something that the country needs to understand more of. We're almost done, so I'm not going to take any more calls. But there is something I would like to make a statement on. Sorry, guys. There is something I would like to make a statement on. How do we silence this thing? Sorry, guys. Let me just... All right, sorry about that. This is, I think, probably the most important thing to say. Tim and I, when we first met, when I went in, I was with Ralph Ramkran's office, and we met. And we were sitting down, and it was before the ANUG was launched, and we were discussing, politics. And then I guess the conversation had come up is, why am I doing what I'm doing? Why am I getting involved? Why am I here? And part of the explanation that Tim would have made to me at that time was very much understanding that if you're here looking for power, this is not going to be the place to find it. If you're here wanting to be a minister or president, or you have big aspirations, this is not the place for that to happen. We are in a third party. We are starting a party outside of the PPP and the PNC, the two parties that have the country racially divided and control 90% of the population's vote. And when you mix that with a lack of education, you know that is a very slow change coming. And if you understand that, and you're still willing to be here, it means you're here for the right reasons. And the selfish motive that anybody has to gain power or money from politics cannot be found in what we are doing. All right, we're not going to get contracts. We're not going to get, as the comments like this, as the PPP fake accounts like to say, we're not going to get our hands on the oil money. Okay, because in no time in the very near future will ANUG or any third party for that matter be remotely close to the executive presidency. What we are looking for is for Parliament to have a balance in it, for there to be a minority government, which means the majority is opposition in Parliament. Now that, just so people can understand, that means that the PPP can stay as government or APNU can be government. But at the same time, when it comes to passing laws or budgets or debates or conversation, everyone has to be included in Parliament. And that is the process in which everyone can gain representation. So for example, this budget that just passed, the first question that should come out of this is, how is this all the money that you're giving to pensioners and government assistance, right? The most vulnerable in our society. Public assistance.
I'm glad you raised that, because this fantastic budget that is touted as so wonderful and transformative is still allocating $100 a month to people with disabilities
Yes.
who cannot work.
Disability assistance.
$200 a month to the elderly.
Right.
What kind of society decides that it is enough if you're awarding $7 billion contracts and $5 billion contracts and you have a $13 trillion budget?
Yeah.
That you are going to give an elderly person $200 a month, $200 a month to live on. We really got to get a change.
Yeah.
And the only way to do that is a majority opposition in Parliament.
Yeah. And another one is the GPL example that Tim would have raised. In Parliament, the conversation has to come up that the laws need to be changed to disband GPL as a state-owned company and move the power supply organization around the country independently to private contractors. That has to be the solution, because Bill and his gas ashore project is not going to solve our electricity woes. It's obvious, as Tim, we explained today. They can't even, the one plant can't even reach the whole country. So it can't solve the problem no matter what. But nonetheless, I know we are out of time, guys. All right. I'd like to just mimic again the last caller that I do support Tim. Yeah. He shakes his head in no, but you know, we're here right now, and as you can tell, majority of the callers know that there needs to be a change.
What I'll ask people to consider is, you have a lot of money, the country has a lot of money. How would you like to see that money being spent? Mm-hmm. Would you like to see your teachers and your police and your nurses earning more? Would you like to see Guyanese living better and feeling more entitled than the foreigners who are mm-hmm. coming in? Would you like to see a level playing field for all businesses with fair taxation? Or are you happy to continue to see the dark tinted Prados that you can never buy driving past, escorted and not stopping at traffic lights? Are you happy with that?
Yeah.
It's time that we find ways to save our people from where we are now. And the way to do that is to avoid a situation where one of the two large parties continues to control the whole country.
Yeah.
That's the only way to do it.
Yeah, and people have to realize at some point in time that we're not islands. And what this government is doing right now is making everybody dependent on them financially. And what has happened to society is you have all of these people now living in fear that if I don't support the government, if I don't come out and, you know, even if it's pretending to support them, then I will not be able to survive.
Yeah.
And you have people in desperation mode. And like you said, I turn to them all the time and I say, at the end of the day, the solution to this problem, the reason we're behind a minority government is so that the wealth can be spread around. And then all the business owners out there, you know, I don't care if you own the smallest, you know, plant in Stan at the side of the road, or you own big movie tongue and Giftland Mall. The fact of the matter is, if everyone becomes more wealthy, you're going to end up in a position that you yourself will do better. All right. On that note, we are off. We are 2 minutes past time and you're yelling at me. All right, guys. Thank you guys for joining us. Be safe out there this weekend.
And you're
right. Yeah. Have a wonderful weekend, and we will be back here next week. Take care, guys.
Take care.
What himself? Are the youngest.